I'm going to go now and prepare a place for you. And I will come again, and I will take you to be with me. So there was a community that would start, and these communities would start around these homes, and the homes would then build on home upon home upon home, and aunts and uncles, brothers, mom and dad, grandchildren would all live in this insular community. So when you offended or chose to move away from that community, you were moving away from family. So there were two sons who were living in a cluster of homes, and there was an older son who was responsible and obedient, and he did his part to run the family estate. And so when his father died, the older son would receive 2/3 of the inheritance. But he would assume, and he did assume leadership. He would work hard. He was responsible. He'd provide leadership within the house and also in the community. But then there's a story about the younger son who was also responsible, who would take a share in the leadership and the work and everyday responsibility. However, according to the story, the younger son, the brother of the older son, wanted to do life on his own and on his own terms. So this son goes to the father and asks for the father to ask for his share of the inheritance, which was 1/3 of all that was around them, 1/3 of the property, 1/3 of what was happening on the farm, 1/3 of everything, which also meant that this son was also asking to be removed permanently from the household. But it was also saying to the father, I can't wait for you to die, which also estranged him from his relationship with God, or with his father. Here's what else is very unusual about this story. The father grants the son's request. It's absurd. It really is absurd that the father who is acting foolishly grants his request. So the father doesn't ever say to the son, stop what you're doing. I know what's going to happen. I know what's best for you. I understand what you're doing. I know you want to live your own life. But the father never says to the son, stop. You're crazy. You're hurting me, and you're going to eventually hurt yourself. The father never says to the son, it's either my way or the highway, and no, I'm not going to give you anything. And guess what else? You're going to still stay here, and you're going to work even harder. The father absurdly gives the son and grants his son his request. So the son gathers up everything he has. Now understand, too, that when the father did this, he did split up the inheritance. So both boys got what was coming to them, even though he was still alive. And even though the younger son wished him to be dead and says, I can't wait for you to die, the father grants this absurd request. And so the son, younger son, travels to a different country, puts as much space between he and the father and the family and the community that is his family, the community that he grew up around, and it says squandered his property. Now, listen, it doesn't matter what he did. We just know that basically he chose to do his own way of living. He chose to do life his way and ended up wasting it all. So the son then hires himself out, because this is what happened. His circumstances squeezed him. His circumstances squeezed him. He realized he had nothing. He had no one else within his life. So he hires himself and basically hires himself as a slave to a local farmer to do the most degrading job ever. So normally we would say to ourselves, if this was a movie, or if this was a story in a book that we were reading, we probably would say, well, he deserves it. He got what's coming to him. He's got to suffer from the consequences of him pursuing the way he wanted to do life instead of doing life the way his father wanted him to do. See, we would normally think, oh, wow, you know what? It's all good. And this would then stop, the lesson would stop right here. The story in the book, the Dear Abby article, the movie would stop right here, and it would be a moral. It would be a lesson on morality. Don't screw things up at home, or you're going to hit rock bottom. The funny part about this story is it has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. And it has everything to do with the dad, with the parent. So the son, he's feeding pigs, he's hungry, he's starving, he's hit rock bottom, he's at a place in his life that he really regrets probably spending all of his money. Not so much separating himself from his father, but more of just being stuck in the circumstances that he doesn't want to be in. Well, when he came to himself, or another translation says when he came to his senses. Now, he prepares and practices a speech. We don't know if it's him trying to manipulate his dad. I guess it really doesn't matter. We don't know if it really is real, if it's sincere, whether or not the son is choosing to repent. We just know that he's prepared a speech to tell his dad. As a dad, one of the hardest things for your kids to do when they've done something wrong is to approach you, right? If you're a parent, if you did any kind of parenting in your life, one of the hardest things for your kids to do is to admit they're wrong. One of the hardest things for your kids to do is to come up to you and say, basically, you know what, I screwed up. We had to actually practice that a little bit in my home because the kids were so afraid of me and afraid of my reaction that I had to let them know, hey guys, you just got to be honest. I've screwed up. So the younger son practices this speech in his head, ready to say to his dad, Dad, I screwed up. I screwed up in the eyes of you. I screwed up in the eyes of heaven. I screwed up in the eyes of my community. Take me back as a hired hand. So as he makes his way home, this has nothing to do, again, this story has nothing to do with the son. Again, if this was a movie or a story in a book, that may have been where it ended. This isn't you're not expecting this. Those folks that Jesus was telling this story to weren't expecting this. This wasn't the expected response. But while he was still a far while he was still far off. His father saw. So what does that tell you about what's going on in the story? So the son screws up. He wants to come home. He realizes he can't come home in the same fullness of being a son, so he has to come home as a hired hand. Basically a servant within his own home and within his own community. So he figures, I'm going to put this speech together and make my dad feel real bad about this. And yet, here's the picture that we have of this parent. This parent is probably waiting. This parent is probably waiting for his kid come home. His father's probably pacing. He's probably distracted. He's probably moving up and down on the porch, or if he hears someone coming down the road to his property, he probably stops everything he's doing to see if it's his son. It sounds like to me that the father was waiting and watching. But while he was still far off, his father saw. I've been doing this Christian thing since I was 11 years old. My mom would read me the Gospels every night before I went to bed. It was really kind of cool. I have my mom sit down on the bed with me and read through the Bible. I'm 47 years old, right? All right. And this moment still gets me. This moment still grabs me. Now, while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him. See, the father didn't want the son to get his act together before coming home. His father only wanted his son home. So the son begins his speech. Dad, I screwed up. I messed up. Just make me a servant in your house. I'll have something to eat. I'll have a roof over my head. I'll have clothes on my back. And it doesn't matter that I'm a servant. And so the father cuts him off, interrupts him, and tells a servant nearby, quick. So you're looking at some key words in this story. The word quick is important. The parent, the father, interrupts his son and tells his servant, quickly, go get everything I need. Get a robe, get a ring, and get sandals. In other words, you're going to be my son again. The dad didn't ask for an accounting of all the things that he did wrong. The father didn't ask for anything other than, I just want you to be my kid again. I just want to be in relationship with you again. And then they had a feast. They celebrated. They had a table, right? They had a huge table. They had a table with everything on it. They killed the biggest brisket you could find. Well, they didn't kill a brisket. They killed a cow, and they got the brisket. Because that would be awkward if they had to kill the brisket again. They had T-bone. They had filet mignon. They had hamburgers, right? Sorry if you're not a meat eater, but I'm just kind of drooling a little bit right now. Father celebrated, welcomed him home. The father didn't tell him to stop. Tell me what's going on, why it happened. The father didn't say to him, well, it has to be my way this time or you're done. father said to the servant, I want this kid to be my son again. Give him everything he needs to show and prove that he's my son. And then let's have a celebration. This is the sign. See, this is what grace does. See, this is a story about God's grace. In other words, God's undeserved love. Nothing that we can do can make us, that we can earn it from God. Nothing that we can do to make God love us more. There's nothing we can do to make God love us any less. God loves us no matter what. And so as a congregation, we believe that. We believe that wholeheartedly. We believe that to be a part of who we are. So grace hangs that sign on the front door, on the way when you walk in the people's faces that says, welcome home, you belong here. No matter where you've been, no matter what has happened, no matter what your past is, no matter what your present is, God welcomes you home and says to you, you belong here. It doesn't say stop and get your stuff together, right? Get your act together. It doesn't say that you need to stop and behave in a certain way to be here with us. If that was the case, I wouldn't be here either. But it says to each and every one of us, welcome home. So what do we need to know? What do we need to know? What do we need to understand about this story that it has nothing to do with our response to God, but God's response to us, and the grace that tells us and hangs the sign that you welcome home, you belong here, and celebrates that you're welcome here, that you belong here. That God shows up in how we are with one another. That's huge. I don't know if you realize that. Now, for some of you, that comes a lot easier than it is for others of us. But it says that God shows up in how we do life with other people. How we accept and love and listen and make others know that they are known. God shows up in the very ordinary acts of us. When we tell people that, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome home. You belong here. Yeah, but no, you belong here. Yeah, but you don't understand. No, but you belong here. Grace hangs the sign. So this morning as we take communion, and oh yeah, by the way, all y'all are welcome. All y'all are invited. Let's be clear about that. No one's exempt. You don't have to belong to the Methodist Church in Delanco. You don't have to be a Methodist. You don't have to be anything but trying to figure the whole thing out. Because I've said to you before that communion is a starting place for us to understand the story of God's grace and love for us. That grace that says to us, welcome home. And so we take communion because it's telling us, welcome home. That we're glad that you're here. We're grateful that you're here. So communion tells us, welcome home. So on the night Jesus gave himself up for us, he took bread, gave it to his disciples, broke it, gave it to to his friends and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Now, it's not literally his body, thank God, because that would make us cannibals, right? We're not that. We're eating bread because bread is just bread, but bread represents and reminds us of the sacrifice that Jesus made. And then there's this cup, and he refers to the cup, and he said, "This is my new covenant." It reminds us that we get to come home again. That we have a relationship with someone who's greater and bigger than ourselves, who can handle it, by the way, and who's not insecure about his relationship with us, who's big enough, loving enough to welcome us home as many times as it takes for us to get it. So we celebrate by drinking out of tiny little cups of juice that is not Jesus' blood, but represents the forgiveness that we experience within our lives. So I'm going to ask Steve and Dave, Eileen, Karen, the Rossies to come forward at this time to take communion. And then when they're done taking communion, they're going to go and they're going to serve communion. And then the rest of you get to come down and have communion as well. So here's how it works. You all from over here come around like this, you get your communion, right? Easy. Then all of you over here on this side come around, take communion, go back and sit down. Same thing with over here. You do it backwards. Here's the key. Every one of you are allowed here. Here's the other key. We have an altar. It's kind of our prayer table, right? You can come down and you can talk to God. And here's the thing. You don't have to use language like I use when I pray. Please don't. It's going to be awkward. God's going to mix us up. We don't want that. Not really, but talk to God in whatever way you need to talk to God. Now, that might mean that you have to take the time today to surrender and say, "God, I can't do this anymore. I've been doing my life this way. I know it's not the right way I want to go. God, I need your grace to get me in the place where I need to be." That might be what you need to talk to God about. You might have to say, "God, I need you to be the leader of my life, and I need you to guide me. I need you to lead me the way I need to go, because, God, guess what? I'm not good at this." Or you just might need to come down here and just spend some time in prayer because you know you got some things going on inside your head and your heart. And so you're like, "I got to get this kind of taken care of." Go through the prayer table. It's open. You can hang out. Talk to God. You don't have to hang out here. You can hang out there. You can hang out in your car, walking home, whatever. I just want you to know that you can spend some time here if you need. All right.
Suddenly one way or the other, something has caused you to draw the line. Used to be we were so together, always in tune with every note of change. Life is so fleeting like the weather, leaving our hearts unsure, rearranged. Find the truth and it will set you free. Leave the past so far behind, making new the us we used to be. Even when our lives unwind, oh yeah. I found the answer to my question. I had to grasp it while I could. My friend, I offer one suggestion. I only wish that you understood. So why do you hate me now, my brother? Why do you hate me now, sweet sister? Suddenly all things are together. Jesus has asked you to cross the line. Jesus is the truth, he'll set you free. Bring your wayward past in line, making new the us we used to be. Even when our lives unwind, oh yeah. twist and turning, heaven only knows. And time goes by, leaves us searching for the reasons why. When we're lost, don't know what to do, help us find our way to you. You are the way, the truth, and the life. Lost and weary pilgrims on this earth, in search of meaning of our birth, all the while believing in the lie. This life is truly ours until we die. This life is hard, and we are not the captains of our souls, but God is great, greater than the trials we must face. When we're lost, don't know what to do, help us find our way to you. 'Cause you are the way, the truth, and the life. Never truly